I've ridden the biggest waves of my life on it. And if I'm going to ride a huge wave at Jaws, that's going to be the board.
And for people who never saw that Wipeout, what happened? How you doing?
Thanks for having me back on.
I know, it's been a couple years. It's been too long.
Even more.
I know.
What's going on?
I think that the last time we came on, you were putting out forest fires in. You were putting out fires at your house, and we told that story.
Yeah, we did. I know. Those are some fond memories.
Where's my coffee? And a lot's happened since then, dude.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, to get things started, let's talk about the board that you brought to Jaws.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
That's fresh in the mind for sure.
Okay. So what were you riding when you went over there?
So I brought 2 boards, as much as I could fit in my board bags, and I had a 9.2 Iconoclast. He's a shaper out of Half Moon Bay that collaborates with Twiggy boards. So he takes Twiggy files and kind of hones them down to like my liking. And that was the 9.2 I brought that I rode for 3 days of the swell. And then I just, for some reason, had a feeling that I should bring this old 9.4 Rusty that I've got the best and biggest waves at Mavericks on. And it just felt fitting that, you know, if the real big day occurred, that would be the board to ride.
9.4.
Yep.
Okay.
9.4, that's kind of I have a 10.2 that I'm scared to ride. I haven't even ridden it. It just feels like too much.
Yeah.
Which probably could have been conducive to Jaws because a lot of the guys are riding in that realm. But yeah, just the 9.2 was going good. And it was just the type of board that like I thought would work for the type of wave I wanted at Jaws, which would be a West Bowl, kind of like Albie, trying to knife in behind it and get the tube, because that's the dream for sure, to just like get the Jaws tube. So that was the goal in mind. But yeah, as the days went on, it was a 5-day swell. I surfed for 4 days of it, and by the last day, the daunting 100-foot swell was coming, and it wasn't even like an indecisive decision. I didn't hesitate and was just thinking, I gotta ride that 9.4. I've ridden the biggest waves of my life on it, and if I'm gonna ride a huge wave at Jaws, that's gonna be the board. Haven't ridden it in a couple years, so felt a little dicey because I was super used to Mike's boards.
So, and this is a Rusty.
It's a Rusty.
And you've had that thing forever.
Yeah, probably almost a decade.
Okay.
Yeah.
So pretty much almost since you started surfing big waves, that was one of the first boards that you have, which is interesting because like when it comes to short boards, a lot of guys are getting new boards almost every year. But with big waves, you can almost have, if it doesn't break, you can have it for an entire career.
Oh, 100%. And people do. They ride their boards from 20 years ago, some of the old dogs. And
they still work.
It's probably, they still work. And it just goes to show that you don't really need to experiment as much as you think, unless you're Kai Linney or something, which is always trying to push the limits. If you're feeling comfortable on a board, if it ain't broke,
if you
don't
like
fix
it. Yeah.
For sure.
And were both your boards quads?
Yep, I'm only riding quads.
And has that been from the beginning that you started
I rode
big wave
tries
boards?
in the beginning a little bit, but then once I kind of dialed in my style and like just figuring it out how to surf big waves, I started riding quads more.
Okay.
And then just since then, I haven't even changed my fins.
Right.
Been riding the Danny Fuller pipe fins at Mavs like the whole time. So
we're going to get to the wave that you got, but you mentioned you figuring out how to ride big waves.
Yep.
What was that? What would you say were the biggest aha moments for you when you started just playing around with big waves to actually figuring out how to ride them?
God, I mean, there's the first time I ever surfed Mavs and felt that amount of speed on a wave, I like instantly just fell over. So that was definitely a big aha moment. Just got to the bottom and the board went straight, and I just tried to turn and fell over. So yeah, learning how to take it slower and have a more drawn out line and just like use your speed to your advantage and not get too ahead of yourself like you'd surf a small wave. That was definitely a big learning curve. And then a couple of years later, just feeling like the fire and like I want to charge, and eating shit on that huge Wipeout.
Right, so you got Wipeout of the year in, was that 2017?
2017.
Okay.
So that was a huge aha moment, because I was trying to push myself to the level I like wanted to be at without knowing the playing field of Mavericks properly.
And for people who never saw that Wipeout, what happened?
So, yeah, if you haven't, I was just too psyched, paddled deeper than everyone, and got a big West Bowl that was just in the freaking middle of the apex of the slab at Mavericks. And as I stood up, it just doubled up under me, and I was just caught in the lip and did the full just jump into the wave
Hail Mary,
over the falls.
And that was the offshore day.
Footer.
That was the offshore day too.
Yeah, on
so
top of it was
a lot of people are going down.
Yeah, guaranteed. It wasn't the only Wipeout of that day, but it was definitely one of the most historic.
Worst. Yeah,
it was the worst.
It was
worst
the one It was the one everyone remembered
for sure.
Which is kind of what you don't want.
Yeah,
as long as someone has a worse Wipeout than you, you're okay, because that's what you go under the radar. Yeah. It's not a good. You don't want to be known as the Wipeout guy.
No, and I was for a while. I got tons of good waves like the next 5 years, and.
You had to prove
they went under the radar. Yeah. Overpowered.
Yeah. No one remembers the waves that you made unless it's a historic wave that you made. That's so
crazy.
Funny. And so figuring out how to draw out your surfing more on a big wave. That was one lesson that you took that transitioned you from just riding small to medium sized waves to legitimate big waves. Is there anything else that were big moments that just clicked for you, and things that you would try and remind yourself of when you would go out into surfing big waves?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like just going into it like it's a regular surf session, and just not losing sleep over it and thinking about it too much, because obviously when you're passionate about big waves, you're committed, and when the day arises, there's no question that you're going to go. So just getting in your head and thinking about all the worst case scenarios, and just minimizing those thoughts, and just thinking positively, and knowing that I'm capable, and just telling myself that I'm going to go out, and I don't have to like chase any particular wave or anything. Just wait for the right moment and don't rush into it. And I feel like the Wipeout, I felt like I needed to like rush into it and get a huge one, and like prove to myself and the world that I'm a charger, that you can roll with the punches with everyone else. And and
then you mistime something.
Yeah, exactly. So
right.
Yeah, just going into it slow as pro. And that's kind of been my motto a little bit with a lot of things in life, for sure. And just waiting for that right opportunity. And then once you make a few and you're in a good position, that's when like things start to line up, and you learn the lineup at big waves. And just always studying it a little bit. Sometimes I'm a little too psyched and I'll study it for 5 minutes on the channel. Sometimes I'll study it for 30 minutes and just kind of like feel the energy and watch the day, and because every day's so much different, and just seeing how the wind's hitting it and how the direction is, and if it's more shifty than usual, or watching friends and people get their own waves and just see how they're riding it, and what kind of bumps in the bottom of the wave, and just those little critical things that you can oversee if you don't study it at all.
Right, and you're so studying, for people who might not know, means sitting on the channel before you're going to paddle into the bowl, just to see what the wave is doing.
Exactly.
Because for a wave like Mavericks, if you're paddling out from the shore, it's going to be a 20-30 minute paddle where you're not really seeing waves. You're just ducking under progressively bigger white water, and then you finally make it out there. And either you could go straight out there, or you could sit on the channel for a second and kind of just see where it seems like the waves are coming in, which is going to give you a better chance to be in the spot for it.
Guaranteed.
How many times had you surfed Jaws before?
I hadn't been there before.
That was your first time?
Yeah. And luckily got multiple days in a row.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So, where did you stay? Walk me through how you ended up kind of clicking into that wave and the community and just the whole trip itself.
Yeah, so I ended up staying at Matt Miola's house. But last November,
we love Matt,
my wife.
Great hunter.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's another story that, well, the reason I clicked in with all those guys was just me and my wife decided to go on a little engagement kind of celebration, almost pre-honeymoon. And, I decided to go to Maui. Tickets were cheap. It was November last year, and we didn't line up a swell or anything. I just brought a couple shortboards and just kind of went on like a casual trip and ended up staying at Tori Meister's and Albie's house. But Tori was gone, so we just kind of subletted his room for like a week. And, just since we were there, they kind of almost felt obligated to like help us out, and we were just in their scene. And then we ended up all obviously getting along, kind of cut from the same cloth. Mm-hmm. And since there was no pressures of big waves, and because when it's like huge swells, those guys are constantly being bombarded with just people that need help, which is an obvious thing that happens all over the world. And just to go there when everyone's kind of at ease and like on their normal day-to-day program was cool.
So when was this that you went?
It was last November.
That's cool.
Yeah, so a little over a year ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just more casual. We were diving and spearfishing, and I went hunting with Matt a couple days in his gullies and just surfing small waves and going to barbecues and drinking beers and just like getting to know everyone. And
I have a friend who lives at Rocky Point on the North Shore. So in the winter, obviously, gets hit up constantly for people who want to stay at his house.
You feel bad.
So he's instituted a one toilet paper roll rule. Where you get one toilet paper roll, and as soon as that roll is done, you got to leave the house.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So however long it takes you to get through that roll of toilet paper,
square, shit.
I know people are gonna go army style.
Exactly.
I know. I'm like, that's dangerous with a bunch of dirtbag surfers.
Yeah.
They don't need to wipe their ass.
Yeah, before you know, you're gonna be running down to the beach. Rinse off the saltwater bidet. I know. Yeah, that's a good institution right there.
So you met all those guys in November.
Yeah.
And it was a more cruisy trip.
Super cruisy. Yeah, we stayed for a week, and just since then, we all realized we're like-minded, and it's a really similar community to here. Just we're in like a little bubble, and you grow up with your same people.
Super similar.
Build those really strong connections and relationships, and no matter how much time goes on apart, you're always gonna get back and just have the same vibes with each other. Yeah.
How would you describe the parallels between the Santa Cruz culture and the Maui culture?
Yeah, I mean, we all have similar outlets, I think, and when you grow up with like a core squad that has similar passions to you, which all the parallels would be like hunting and surfing, obviously being number one. Surfing, skating, hunting, spearfishing.
Having a big wave right there.
Having a big wave right there for sure. And then obviously there's some guys and girls that, like they kind of focus on the fishing side of it, or some guys focus on the surfing, but like really it's all in the same circle of, you're utilizing the abundance of the sea and nature and just being outdoors. And I think like all those outdoor outlets are similar to all the outdoor outlets we have here.
Mountain biking too.
Mountain biking.
Yeah. A lot of mountain biking.
A lot of it for sure. So I think
little known fact, Albie Lair, big mountain biker.
Yeah, I know, right? Huge. And then, when it's not pumping and it's summertime, they have all those things that they love to do as well. Mm-hmm. That they don't outweigh the focus of big wave season. But
So, met all those guys. Did you bring your bow over the first time?
I didn't, and Matt luckily had 2 compound bows, and
great,
and like we have a similar draw length, so instantly like he was just psyched to like show me the ropes and like his deal, and
friend.
We were running around, and it was a high octane hunt, and I mean those the people that don't know, axis deer are out there, and it's just like compared to how we grew up hunting blacktail, like the amount of opportunities you get on Maui or Lanai hunting axis deer is insane.
Yeah, it's a completely different,
like deer are like
game.
Almost stepping on you when you're making stalks and stuff. It's,
right.
It's completely different. So
so
that was like a dream to.
So for people who
Maui.
don't know, like the process of stalking an animal is part of. It's a part of hunting where you can greatly improve hunting.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like when you actually, the distance between when you see an animal and then you're trying to close the distance on that animal so that where you can get into a shot is like those movements, how you're moving through nature, where you're pausing, where you're noticing the wind is like, I would almost equate that to surfing a wave. Like actually being up and riding on a wave is when you're stalking an animal. So the guys in Maui and Hawaii generally they just get really good at hunting really quickly because they're interacting with animals a lot within that process of trying to close the distance. Whereas in Santa Cruz, you're a lot of times just not seeing an animal for long stretches of time and staying put.
So it does your head in.
Trying to stay focused. Yeah. But we're going to get to that too, because I know you've had some good blacktail hunts this year.
Definitely.
So you show up at Jaws, first time. What's it like?
Oh, man. Yeah, so just the excitement of like finally making it happen. And then having those connections and just having it all work out, and just camping out at Miola's house. It was still kind of like, and then the first day was just a small day, and we surfed Hokipa, and then my boards hadn't even arrived yet, so that was kind of unnerving a little bit. But picked them up on the last flight of the day, and God, it was like a pretty early morning, and it was classic because like Loey and Matt Bromley ended up showing up around the time I did, and they were there for the whole swell as well.
Tom Lowe.
Yeah.
Tom Lowe.
We
love Tom Lowe.
Which was awesome because I hadn't seen Tom Lowe in years, and it was like an instant kind of brotherhood back then when I met him. So to like rekindle that relationship really ignited the fire, and we just ended up like being a team. Like that was our 3-pack.
Mm-hmm.
And we I actually was renting a car from Ollie, who does safety for Albie, and he was like, please don't drive it down the trail. It's like super hectic. It's going to get screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had this nice truck, but I wasn't allowed to drive it down the trail for good reason. And I didn't know, but the trail is as gnarly as like a 4x trail could get, kind of.
What's the trail?
The trail it's like a couple mile dirt track that goes down to the bluff at Jaws. So instantly, like the logistics of just getting down to Jaws were like a thing we had to overcome. But then Bromley had a good truck, and they were like, oh, I don't really know. I've never really 4x'd before, and asked if I had, and I was like, yeah, I 4x all the time, whatever, camping and going to the Sierras and stuff. And like ended up being the chauffeur to get down to Jaws for the rest of the trip. So yeah, we had his bitchin' truck, but it was like too big, but still it worked out, and just crept and crawled down this gnarly 4x trail. It was probably about like 8 a.m. Had my wife Maddie, Tom Lowe, and Bromley. That was the team. I can't forget Maddie. She was in there deep with the boys, just like handling. And it was actually one of the better days of the swell, because it was the first swell that showed up, so there was just like nothing else in the water, and it was super clean. And God, just seeing it for the first time, it was a surreal moment.
Yeah. Background music just started to play randomly.
It was real. I was like,
like Rick Kane, North Shore style.
And the whole thing just like being up there, and then like you just I've seen it for so many years, like the whole process of being in those cool pine trees and then getting down into the gully and just following the boys in the red dirt and like got your big wave boards and going down, and I don't know, it was just unforgettable, and then to have it be like as glassy as it gets and pretty west, and just seeing humongous tubes come through, and then it all really hit me when we're like down on the rocks and just I'm seeing just like 5 to 8 foot shore pound just like moving boulders. I'm like, oh shit, this is where it really starts. Like it's no joke out here. You gotta make your way down a 4x trail, which you could easily flip your truck, go down a sketchy trail, and then it's not over. You gotta get out there somehow. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, trying to reserve the excitement until I was out there, because it was just like one thing at a time that you had to focus on.
Some guys will paddle out from the rocks and keep their fins out of their board.
Yeah.
Because the fins will just get knocked out with boulders.
There's a high chance that would happen for sure.
So walk me through what it looks like when you make it down this serene, beautiful trail. It feels like you're on a little hike in Hawaii, and then you make it to these boulders. What does it look like at the boulder?
So it's just scattered boulders that are probably like head size to, I don't know, like
human size
to basketball size, just like all locked in, and it's just a small cove. It's probably like, I don't know, maybe 100 yards wide. And then the energy doesn't really dissipate at Jaws. I mean, it does. It's not like Jaws is breaking on the boulders, but it's actually way closer to the shore than I realized. So you can see it, and it's pretty much just outside of those boulders, and then all that energy is just, it's kind of like actually pushing north, because like you're on the north side of the island and the swells are coming from the west and just like fully horseshoeing in, and all that water is getting pushed north, and then it kind of wraps around and all the water has to escape somewhere. So it's just like a rushing current that goes right in front of those rocks. And you can just hear boulders just from the current, everything shifting. Yeah, just constant carnage. So I know Matt and Loey had been there before, so I was just kind of they were taking the lead, and Bromley pulls it super clean. He jumps off and glides out, and I'm like, okay, that didn't look too bad. And it was kind of a good lull, so it was Loey's turn, and Loey like went kind of too far down, which I realized later that you don't really want to be too far down, because as the shore break surges, it lifts, and then all of a sudden there's a wave that's taller than you, and you're down the boulders on this slope, and there's no possible way you can like jump over the wave.
Fuck. Yeah.
So I was like, oh shit. And Loey kind of did that, and he slipped and knocked his board, but then like somehow pulled it and got sucked out. And I was like, okay, I got to do that, but not slip. I'm not going to slip. And of course I did. And right when I got down to the bottom, just the gnarliest, slickest rocks, and I got freaking mainland weak feet from just wearing shoes 24/7 in the cold, and like
booties all
that
winter.
Was one thing that I was worried about, just not having ever surfed a big wave without booties. I've never done that.
Yeah.
And my feet are so soft. I have no Hawaiian calluses, and instantly I go too low, slip on my back, and then there's like a 6-foot surge coming at me. So I have my board, and I'm like trying to push through the freaking surge, and there's just no way. I'm like so awkward, and just get pile driven into rocks into my back, and I'm like bonking my board. I'm like, oh, I'm done. I'm not even gonna make it out to Jaws. My fins are instantly all broken out
because the fins are in the board.
Yeah.
Oh, did you keep your leash on, or was the leash off?
My leash was on.
Leash
I was like
on
ready
too.
to go. I'm gonna make this.
Yeah.
Just instantly get my ass handed to me. Wake up call.
Do most people
blasted?
Keep their leashes on when they jump off those rocks?
It seemed like it.
Okay.
Yeah, but I've had scenarios where in Madeira where my leash is wrapped around rocks, which is
sketchy.
Similar setups. And so I was definitely a little worried about that, but I kind of got like pushed back enough where I was almost on like high ground again. And then after that, I was like, okay, I'm really going to take my time. And I realized that you just have to wait for the right surge, and you can wait at the top of the rocks. And it's daunting because about 20 feet down from you is just completely dry. But then as the surge comes, you can just wait for that white water to like fill in just enough to where you jump back out. And then as it surges back out, you just get sucked out.
Jump on, yeah. Okay.
So yeah, that's what I
pulled
it
the second time.
Day. Pulled it the second time.
Okay.
Yeah, and the boys were like, "Oh, he's gonna be fine," and they just paddled out. I was like, "Okay, I'm on my own," and made it out, and that was another. Just after that, I realized, I'm on the channel. I'm gonna study it.
Okay. So you make it out there.
Another studying situation. Yeah.
Was there anything surprising to you once you got out to the channel? Things that you hadn't seen in video or aha moments in the channel that you're like, oh shit, okay, now I need to approach this differently, or anything at all like that?
I mean, yeah, I guess so. It was kind of hard to wrap my head around where you were gonna take off on a wave that just barrels all the way until the channel.
Mm-hmm.
Because Mavericks, it made me realize like how comfortable I am at Mavericks. And just knowing that lineup way better, and usually I can figure out if I'm surfing a big wave, it's not nearly as gnarly as Mavericks, so I kind of catch on pretty quick.
Right.
And like Todos, I caught on pretty quick, and other waves in Madeira and stuff. Because
it feels like a step. It feels like a step down.
A little
from
bit,
Mavericks,
exactly.
Yeah.
And Jaws felt like a step up, definitely. And not to say it's. I mean, they're the two most heavy waves in the world for sure. But yeah, I didn't realize like how much it horseshoes in and just bends at you, and it keeps bending, and it just looks like a giant closeout, but then by the time you're on it, you're like kind of on the shoulder because it just is like bending and almost going north.
Right.
I mean, or
so
I
just
guess east.
Your perception of how deep you need to take off, as opposed to then like all of a sudden you're too far on the shoulder, is really hard to figure out.
Definitely.
I was talking to Kyle Boothman about the trip that you guys took to Chopo, and he was like that same thing. Like you feel like you're taking off on a closeout, and then all of a sudden you're too far on the shoulder.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because it's horseshoeing so hard, you need to take off on what looks like a closeout out there.
Oh, 100%. And those will be the best waves of your life. And it is similar, and they're both West Bulls. Mm. For some reason, the West Bulls are probably the waves of your life, but also the hardest to wrap your head around.
Right.
So yeah, just wrapping my head around it, and just kind of trying to overcome the fear of having no booties, and just super adamant about waxing my board and making sure I was gonna have a grip. And it took me probably a couple hours to get my first wave.
Mm. Did you keep wax on? Did you keep wax on you?
Oh yeah,
in the suit
for sure.
Yeah.
It's just, booties are a freaking savior. You don't worry about that ever.
Yeah. I mean, if you're teetering on an airdrop or something like that, it does make a difference.
Yeah, and I did. I ended up eating it really hard on one that I airdropped, and I just slid off it, just like a freaking magic carpet, just slid off the nose of my board.
All right. So the first day you didn't catch a wave for the first few hours.
Yeah, it was about a couple hours, and actually Albie was really helpful, and I was kind of like shadowing him a little bit, and it was just like a smaller West Bull, and got to like ride down the line and feel the energy a little bit. And as the day went on, of course, got more comfortable and started pushing it a little deeper, and I ended up surfing probably like 6 hours that day, and it was just, I was super torched by the end because the Maui sun is strong. But yeah, I mean, overall it was a really successful session for sure. And just kind of shadowing the guys that like to sit on the West Bull, and there was definitely some like really freaking bombing North Bowls that are the ones that Billy Kemper gets and stuff, where they're chipping in and then the West Bowl kind of loads up and they're backdooring that section. Mm-hmm. And then there's the style of waves that come just straight from the West and don't really peak up at the North Bowl. And those are the ones that you see Albie get and like Kai Pula and Kai Linney a lot. And those ones just look like the closeouts. It's just like a line of water that's just coming directly like sideways at you. And I ended up getting one of those as well, and probably would have gotten the barrel of my life, but just like I had never ridden a wave like that and had the opportunity to pull in, and as I was about to pull in, it just like had a weird tight spot at the top. And to me, it almost looked like, you know, when you're dropping it at Mavs and you look up and like you almost think you could probably pack the thing, but you know you can't really trust it, so you ended up just like straightening out. Yeah. I did that. Just it was almost just like muscle memory.
Yeah, you know, wanting a big old lip to the head.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna like kind of go around, and then the white water is gonna like blow me into the channel. Like if I can like squat through it. And as I was doing that, like kind of trying to go around it, it just kept going, and the lip wasn't a chandelier.
Oh no! Yeah.
It was actually a tube that I kind of just went down the line and probably like kind of highlined a little bit and just got an insane barrel. But yeah, that thing just guillotined me, and I was just skipping in front of it for a while, and it just kept like da 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 da. And then I just spent some time underwater, and then another like really well known name out there, Tyler Olorunde. Mm-hmm. He saw it and he's like, "Oh my God, you fully could have just gotten the barrel of your life on that thing." And as soon as I fell, the thing just opened up and was just as wide as it was tall.
Fuck.
It was that was a learning curve for sure.
What was it like having a first beating out there?
It was definitely pretty destructive and like similar to Todos, where it's not very deep, so all the turbulence is in this like the whole depth of from the reef to the surface is just all turbulence. And it seems like Mavericks, you know, you just get plunged deep a lot of the time into a big hole, and it's really rough down there, and there's tons of turbulence. But
right, but you
can sometimes pop it up at the same spot you fell.
Sure, but yeah, that's interesting. So because Mavericks is such a deeper reef, it'll push you a lot further down, and maybe you'll travel underwater.
And sometimes you will, yeah.
And sometimes you'll travel underwater but sometimes you'll just get pushed really far down and then come up close to the same spot.
Exactly.
Whereas Jaws, because it's shallower, will push you further in.
100%.
And just it's more turbulent towards the surface.
Yeah, and it feels like you are nearly at the surface, but you're not getting let up. And it can be a similar hold down.
That's
time,
interesting.
But,
do you notice colors at all differently? Like, was it a white or
definitely.
Is it a brighter Wipeout?
Yeah, through your eyelids.
Yeah, through your eyelids.
You like feel the sun. It's still bright.
Yeah, you're like, I'm still getting sunburned down
exactly. Yeah, the whitewater does not protect me in that way, but
because however deep you go down, you even with your eyes closed, you can notice colors change.
Oh yeah,
to kind of sense how deep you are.
Guaranteed. So
and how did it feel? Like, so I think that, I mean, you're really comfortable at Mavericks. When you get beat out there, I would imagine that you go into this state of, okay, well, I've been here before. Like I've done this before. I know it's not a first time for me. And I think that for people who don't often surf Mavericks, like that can be the scariest part is they get beat, they've never been there before, and then this story starts in their head like, oh fuck, I'm at this place, it's super dark and scary, and it's like a whole new story starts to form in your head that you're unfamiliar with.
Yeah.
What was it like for you, getting a what sounded like a bad beating at a new wave? Was it different at all, or were you just
No, it was. I mean,
calm as a cucumber?
No, I felt super calm as usual. But I feel like I was just kind of in a trance of just like feeling blessed to like be there, and it felt pretty calm for sure. And especially the warm water. It's just like not just piercing into your head when it's cold water. It definitely felt like I had a little bit more energy and like got a good breath, even though, you know how when you fall and you're skipping and you're like, okay, am I going to time my breath right? And then sometimes you'll like just barely time it right, or sometimes you like take multiple because you're like, and then you're still getting skipped. So you're like, maybe I should like take another breath because like you want to like utilize as much oxygen as possible. Yeah. I feel like it was easier to just like trust my breath, and like I took a breath and still skipped and then got beat. And I feel like just being in the warm water, like feeling more loose, that it's true. I mean, it's not as bad getting beat in warm water until you like really get beat. And there was that same session when I airdropped and slipped off my board. That was like a pretty horrific, just rattling beat down. And that's when I kind of went into like survival mode of just like, okay, I pulled my vest and stuff just to make sure I was going to be like all good. And I knew my energy was like more spent because just jaw like shook it out of me.
Right. When was that, later in the session?
It was later in the session. It was like towards the end.
Okay. Yeah. But all in all, there was that first day. You learned a lot.
Yeah.
Learned a lot, man. And then you had 3 more days.
Just feeling like Chicken Joe out there, dude.
So you had 3 more days,
I had
right?
3 more days. And I could have had 4 more days, but I'd never surfed 5 days in a row surfing big waves. So it was nice to take a break and kind of just that much adrenaline just day after day, waking up early and just like getting back into it and doing the whole process of going down the trail, and you're just like constantly in survival mode, you know? And it kind of like, it kind of makes it so I can't get back into like that motto where I'm just like slow as pro. It just like feels like it's nonstop. So just kind of resetting.
Yeah.
And having a day to do that, have that reset was definitely helpful. And
yeah.
It ended up being like a good day to do it because there was like a couple swells in the water, and it was just like would have been pretty dangerous, especially when you're just that spent.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I have a theory that like because there's so much adrenaline in big wave sessions, and if it's like a multiple day thing, it's very hard to slow down, as you said, and like you're kind of just in this multi-day adrenal thump. Like I have a theory that like a lot of big wave surfers just like go straight home and will like incessantly scroll Instagram to like like keep this like amp up, and then like probably like jerk off and like like go to sleep, like okay, we're gonna do it again. Like
for sure, dude, that's a good theory. For sure.
I mean, because it's so hard to slow back down. You know, I mean, there's
especially when you know it's just like another day is coming.
Totally. I mean, I think a few of those guys and girls who can do that are at a great advantage, because then by the 3rd day or the 4th day, they have that full tank of gas.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's hard to do.
It is. I mean, we went down to the trail that day just with our gear, and you know, because when you're watching it from the bluff, you can make, that's the ultimate decision right there. Like, will I or won't I? And we decided against it. But watching it, I mean, if it was the one day a month you got to surf Mavs and it was like that, we instantly would have been on it.
Right.
Like, no question, all day. So. Yeah, that was a bit hard, but I think listening to the body, and just
and that was between energy. That was in the swell, so in the middle of the swell.
The 3rd day.
Okay,
so 2 full days and then a break, and then the 4th day was huge, and it was a good paddle day, and then the 5th day was the really historic swell.
Okay,
yeah.
So the 5th day, we're gonna skip ahead,
and we knew that was coming, so it was like, we need to conserve some energy because that's the ultimate day. And like the swell had been in the forecast not changing at all. So we knew we could probably trust it the way the forecast was going.
And how many people left to surf the eddy?
Pretty much everyone, it seemed like, besides like tow teams.
Okay.
Not everyone, but I mean, there was 10 or 12 of us at most on the big day paddling.
Right. So I only saw, just following Albie's Instagram and seeing some stuff. It looked like practically no one was there because so many people left.
And even a lot of videographers and photographers and just like people that would
typically be there
for sure.
Over on Oahu.
Yeah.
So that day, how was it different from the days before?
Oh man, it was, the lineups changed a lot for sure. Like, instead of the tree being in the saddle on the mountain, like when you're looking at the tree and you're lining it up in the background with like the mountain, there's like some peaks, and pretty much that whole swell there was like one saddle in the mountain that you could line the tree up with. And then on that day, the tree was pretty much in line with like a valley that was probably like 5 miles away from like where the saddle was, you know, in that retrospect. So yeah, the lineups changed a lot for sure. But really it just felt like just a bigger version of what I've been seeing. And it was weird because Jaws is such a slab, so it's not like Mavs where there's, you know, how there's just like California in general, there's all the reefs out the back that really like pop up the swell, and you can see huge lines in it, like magnifies the swell. And you know, when you see a giant line, it's probably going to be a huge set of Mavericks. But Jaws, like, it just comes from such deep water. There's like no dissipation of energy. That even though we were sitting super far out and the lineups changed and we knew it was huge, when they're coming in, it just seems like it's like a 20-footer. But then once you're paddling for it and it really hits the reef, you realize like the scale. So that was definitely it kind of felt like that the whole time. Like some of the waves I got on the first day, it literally felt like I was paddling on a 10-foot wave. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to get a couple like head high big waves today on a gun, but then it jacks up to double the size. So that's basically what it was doing. It was It was like fully like it would hit a slab in West Oz or something. Just
the amount of power that it would come
and then
through.
Just like hitting the reef and
wow,
tripling in size.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why you can't really like paddle that early. It's kind of hard to realize like where you are in the lineup until the wave's pretty close, and then you're like, okay, I could probably get into this wave, or maybe not. But yeah.
So walk me through the wave. How long had you been out? What was going on inside your head at the time, and what happened?
So I mean, we decided to go from the rocks that day. Me and Tom were still together. Bromley had left to go to the Eddy, so that was a pretty bold move, but it just felt right because it was just such a daunting, historic day that we just kind of wanted to like stick to the roots of like core surfing and charging, and it was like just like the lineage of Jaws was just kind of like leading the way. Like, okay, we're just gonna do what like the boys have been doing for years, you know, and just like minimize all like the riffraff of like lining up boats and, you know, timing with everyone to meet and yada yada yada. We were just like, let's get on our program and just like do it exactly what we want and take it slow.
That's cool.
Yeah. So yeah, we ended up going from the rocks and
makes it feel like a regular day of surfing.
Yeah, trying to replicate that as much as possible for sure. Because that just helps you not overthink it 100%. So yeah, we went.
I mean, I just to underscore that, like, I really think that's it's an important point, because when you're doing something like that, like you want to surf the biggest wave of your life, it can almost stop feeling like surfing, and it starts to feel like this whole other sport that you're less familiar with, and like
we don't get to do it very often.
You don't get to do it very often, so you're like, fuck, like, is this closer to like heli skiing or something. Like I've never gone heli skiing. Like it sounds fucking scary. Like, but
So
if you can do what you did, where you just remind yourself, like, okay, I waxed up a surfboard 1,000,000 times. I've paddled a surfboard out to a lineup 1,000,000 times. I've stood up on a wave 1,000,000 times. It reduces that complexity. So I think there's just a lot of wisdom in that attitude.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's definitely different for everyone. Some people might thrive on, doom scrolling Instagram and getting juiced.
Having a freaking armada of skis around them and
huffing fumes and going fast. And
totally. A bunch of cameramen and everyone does it different.
But I feel like we can relate in that way. And that's why it's cool to talk to you about these things, because we have experienced it together and in our own way. And both love to paddle.
Love to paddle.
That's our cup of tea right there.
Totally.
I don't even get FOMO in tow days. Everyone's like, "Oh, you missed the huge day. Were you there?" And I'm like, "Oh, it wasn't paddleable. I'm all good. I don't want to huff fumes and."
Totally. I mean, it's got
get whipped in.
It has its place,
it
but
does.
It has its place. It's super sick. I mean, I've hats off to people who want to do it, and I'd be freaking nothing against it. I'm amped to do it every now and again, and
I have too, for sure, and have fun doing it.
I remember having a conversation with Grant Washburn,
of course,
who is the fucking core lord
of all time,
just the GOAT core lord of Mavericks, who's been out there from the very beginning and still virtually every day will be out there sitting on the inside, deep in the bowl, with a goddamn GoPro in his mouth, like GoProing big waves coming in and then going on them himself. He's such a goddamn core lord. But
on a single fin.
Yeah. But there was we did a podcast a few years ago. It's one of my favorites ever in terms of talking about big waves, because he's just understands it so deeply, and he's such a good storyteller. But he said there was a time at Mavs when everyone started towing, and it became this thing where like surf media was like, oh, towing, like no one had really put their foot down to talk about the difference between tow surfing and paddle surfing, and the difference in skill that it takes to paddle into a big wave versus tow into a big wave. Like those are. People are just been like, whoa, it's a bigger wave.
And those are two different sports.
Those are two different sports, for sure.
Yeah, you're right, though.
And he was like, so there was this point where everyone started towing at Mavs, and even on paddleable days, there were a bunch of guys that were just whipping in and like, great, we can put ourselves in the bowl and it almost seemed like paddle surfing was dying and just tow surfing was completely going to take over. And at these waves like Mavs, you would only see tow surfers out after that. And he's like, and we would come in from a day like that, and we wouldn't feel the rush that you typically feel from a day of paddling.
Definitely.
Like the feeling of free falling down a wave that then gives you that post high when you come in, where you're just like, holy shit, like that was crazy. He's like, I would come in from a day of towing and didn't really feel it. Like you'd see the photos of these massive waves, but while you're on the wave, you wouldn't be like, wow, that was the biggest wave I've ever surfed. Whereas if you're paddling it, you can really tell, like, whoa, that was the biggest fucking wave I've ever paddled into.
Definitely, you can tell. You're not riding the energy from way out before it hits the bowl, and you're on the bottom.
Yeah. And again, no disrespect to people who are doing that shit, and I'm fully into, like,
it's
fucking
charging.
Whip me into a couple for sure.
That's one thing. I'm like, if I can't paddle into 100-footer, like, do I want to be on that wave and have the risk of falling? And like feeling just, I don't know, maybe like, could I survive that?
Right.
You know? Like I could survive what I know, and I can paddle the biggest wave I can try to get, but I've fallen on some of the bigger waves I've paddled on, and I know I can survive that. But like, if I push it to that realm, like if I fall, like what could happen? That might actually get in my head a little bit. But I'm sure, like, if you asked Aloe and Luca and Augie and the boys in our community that are really pushing the limits of tow and paddle. I'm sure they'd agree with you with that rush of paddling.
Well, all those guys paddle.
Exactly, which is cool. Which I was
like,
going to ask.
The thing that's lame is if you're just tow surfing and you don't know how to actually paddle.
Now, because that's that skill level, and you can tell when. And it's scary because people that probably would never paddle a big wave are towing, and they're like so chaotic, and every bump is hitting them, and they have like just no control, and then they end up just skipping, and it's on a freaking 60-foot wave, and you're like, oh my God, dude. Like, are you prepared for this? Like, maybe you should paddle and, realize it, like, if you really want this or not.
Yeah. I think
you can see it. You can see the skill difference when you're good paddlers are also towing.
Yeah. Sure. I think just inherently it becomes a less personal thing too.
It's like bow hunting and rifle hunting.
A little bit.
Which I respect rifle hunting.
A little
hunting is in general.
I love rifle hunting.
Yeah. I haven't gotten that in. You want to get meat?
Yeah.
Don't bow hunt.
Yeah, go fuck yeah, dude. I was out in Montana this year and didn't even fucking see an animal with my bow for like a week and a half. But no, I mean the thing that Grant said that stuck with me is just like the difference that he felt when he would come in from one of those days. Yeah. Like the feeling when you come into the dock was so much different.
Definitely.
And I think that the whole big wave community is really indebted to people like Mark Healy, Greg Long, Shane Dorian, like people who were around that time really put their foot down to be like, no, paddle surfing is where
the most progression.
The most progression is going to come in this sport. And those were the guys, Danilo Couto, like who basically told surf media and used their platforms to direct the sport to where it is now, where you have the next generation of guys that have pushed it and are continuing to push it so far in that paddle realm.
There's got to be those people in history that make it possible for the next generation.
For sure.
If they didn't do it, we'd be behind in the progression for sure.
And you have, what Albie is a great example of this. Like his Instagram post before you guys went out, which was like, don't fucking get in our way while we're going to paddle the most historic swell
in
my lifetime
for sure.
So I think it's really cool when you have guys like that who have that legitimacy to also
draw the line
and just say, don't fuck with us because we want to try and do something that you may never have the opportunity to do again.
And there's going to be a time in that day where you guys are going to get yours, like, so just, let us have our time while we can and not have to deal with any unnatural elements that the towing around paddle surfers brings.
So one thing that I loved was seeing Albie's acknowledgement of you in a video that he posted where it shows the entire set come in, and it shows you scratch over one humongous wave and then scratch out to another one that looks like you're just going to keep paddling out to the horizon. It's probably what I would have done. Just straight up. I
almost did it.
Fuck this, dude. But you really at the last minute whip it on that wave into exactly the spot that you needed to and get what looked like 5 or 6 strokes into what Albie said is one of the biggest waves ever paddled at Jaws. So walk me through that little moment. I think he used the right word. He said the amount of fortitude it took Wilem to whip it on this wave is something that everyone should take note of. Because that is to paddle out like you're barely going to make it over a wave, whip it and decide to go is I mean, I would imagine that's one of the defining moments of your life.
Oh yeah. It was like,
if you look back on your life, like that moment to decide to whip it on that wave will probably stack up in, the top few decisions that helped fortify you as a man.
Yeah.
Straight up.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it for sure. If you dive into it, it's way more complex than I mean, I even realize I think it's just still sinking in, but yeah, I mean, I think like having Albie out there, and it was Tom, Albie, and I. There's 3 guys out there, and we were just baffled that we were just blessed with freaking having the whole lineup to ourselves, and just shadowing Albie again, and like just having that psych with each other, and then knowing that there was that huge set coming, and he went on the first wave, and I was just like, holy shit, he is a madman, but like so comfortable and calculated, and just like you don't ever think he's gonna fall. He's always gonna make it. And I didn't even look because I knew that, I mean, there was a huge wave coming, so I never saw him pull out in the channel or anything, but I was like, he made it for sure. And I'm just like, as that thought's going through my mind, I'm like, oh shit, I have to deal with getting out the back because a freaking 60-foot wave's coming right now. And that first one came, and I'm like, oh my God, I really hope he made it, because if that wave broke on his head, it would have been pretty detrimental, but he probably would have been fine. But I think like he helped me fortify my mind and soul in that moment, because once I got over that one, I was like, okay, I'm in a good position to go if there's another wave without the risk of just getting a huge set on the head. So it's like 3rd wave in a set. That's probably pretty calculated to go on a wave like that. And I mean, like I said earlier, Jaws comes from such deep water, and you don't really like realize the position you are in on the reef until the wave's pretty close to you. Especially for me, because I was new there, and I'm not that comfortable with it yet. But as that thing was approaching, I was like, am I inside? Am I too far out? And that's why I made such like a last minute decision. Like in my mind, I was probably not going to go as I paddle over the one before that. But then as it approached and wasn't breaking yet, I realized that I was actually in a pretty prime spot. And it's pretty classic seeing that angle of the drone, how like much I get sucked up, because like in my mind I was paddling at the bottom, but it kind of seems like I turned around like in the trough of the wave, almost like as it was sucking me up already, and I'm like going backwards right until the last second, where it just gives me that like chip in just to get enough momentum,
right? Because it's coming in so fast.
Like you're never gonna match that momentum unless you're just in that spot, like right at the top, where it's just gonna let you in. So God, I know, I feel like it's pretty simple for me, really, in the grand scheme. I just want to surf big waves, and I didn't have the mission to get the biggest wave of my life, but I knew that if you're gonna ride a wave that day, it's gonna be one of the most memorable rides of your life. So yeah, that just happened to be like a really large, doable set that I was just blessed to be in the right spot on. And yeah, I went, and there was nothing going through my mind besides just, I'm going to make it, and I'll deal with the repercussions if I don't. And like, I'm in this beautiful place, and just somehow didn't get skunked, and was at Jaws, and like stayed patient the last 5 years when I started really thinking about coming here, just to wait for the ride opportunity. And that whole journey of just like big wave surfing culminated into like that moment. And I'm really glad I made that right decision, and somehow made it, because definitely the wind getting under my board and kind of air dropping a little bit, and that whole scenario of like just going that fast, and like Jaws making its own wind and getting hung up, and then like dealing with the whitewater and just somehow pulling it, like that was the ultimate thrill. Because when you feel like you're not going to make it the whole time, and then somehow you're on the channel in like a blink of an eye, it all really sinks in. You're just like, oh,
so from what
Jesus.
I saw in the clip, you airdrop down the wave, and then it's such a big wave, it seems like you're at the bottom, but then there's a whole nother section of like trophy white water
from that wave before.
From the wave before that you had to make it through.
Yeah, which as I was dropping in, I didn't even notice that because it was so clean as I was dropping in that I thought it was a good wave choice, which it ultimately was a good wave choice. But dealing with that was gnarly, and I think it just goes to show like the comfortability I had on that old board, and just the old Rusty, that's super heavy and knifey, but has like a really good amount of rocker, and like I seemed to like stand really centered in that board, and I was almost like beyond centered, almost closer to the nose than I was to the tail.
Is a 9.6, 9.4?
It's a 9.4.
9.4.
So I think it's just the way
not a very big board.
No.
I mean, for what a lot of people ride.
Definitely.
In the 10-foot range. I mean, that's...
Yeah, and that's probably why I'm never really stroking in from outside that far.
Right.
I'm like always trying to be in the most critical spot, and just so I can paddle into it. Because, I mean, I'm not like the strongest paddler. I don't have like huge long arms with big mitts
no
or
one's
anything,
Jamie Mitchell.
Yeah, exactly. So it just kind of it works with like what I'm working with in my style. So and again, like I'm never the guy that's trying to get the biggest wave. Like I just want to freaking surf well and
just get waves,
get barreled and like get waves. So yeah, I think I mean Albie was on a 9.4 as well, and that whole swell the days before he was on an 8.8. So that's his freaking go-to right there, and that just goes to show like what you can do being in more critical positions. And he's obviously like one of the best surfers in the world, just all around.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he's it's hard to comprehend what he does.
Yeah.
When you made the channel, arms over your head, claimed it. Fuck yeah. After that, were you like, I'm done? That was, and what did it feel like, arms over your head? Were you like, I think that might have been the biggest one
that was
of my
like
life?
A visceral, I didn't even think that right away. I think because, I mean, it felt like a really long drop, but I feel like it was probably the fastest I've ever gone on a wave, that it was over so quick. But like I knew it was a big wave, of course, because it was just huge that day, and if you were going to get a wave, it was going to be huge. But yeah, since I went so fast and made it to the bottom and to the channel so quick, it was just like a relief and like that adrenaline dump of, when you like are on a really good one and you're just making waves, and it's almost like feels easy. And you're in the flow state, and you're in the perfect position, and your board's glued to the face, and you're just like surfing, and it's like feels really good, and it feels successful, and you get that really like gratifying feeling at the end of the day when you come in.
Yeah. You ride like energy waves within a single session.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you get a good one, you should probably paddle back out and try and get 4 more good ones within the next 20 minutes, because
just capitalize on
the mojo.
For sure.
Yeah, you can't lose.
And
it's like being out at a bar when you're single and like you just jamming, all the girls like you. You should be getting those numbers, because there's going to be another night at the bar where you can't even spit out a coherent sentence.
No doubt. And that is like ultimately the best, like most successful feeling. But that one wave where the whole time you feel like you're just not gonna make it, and then you do, that nothing really compares to the feeling you get from like a wave like that.
Yeah, you surprise yourself.
Yeah, and that's probably when you're like pushing yourself to the next level too. When you go on a wave and you maybe don't feel like you're in the best spot, but you're gonna push it anyway, and then you end up making it. That's kind of what that wave felt like. And I like didn't even think about claiming it for a split second, but I like saw Albie on the channel, and he was just like hooting and just freaking like you know how he is. He's like just an aggressive, just psycher. Freaking, just his energy
He's
level.
The best.
Like,
he's the best.
It was an instant, like, I saw that, him, like, claiming it for me, and just instantly just double, like, rock on. And I forgot I did that, and then I just saw a photo and, like, zoomed in. I was like, I'm actually going like this.
You're doing a rock on.
Yeah.
We all have our own thing, man.
And, like, I don't know. It was just a visceral, like, reaction to that wave. And
Albie has a great philosophy on claiming. He said, this is one of the best moments of your life. Don't pretend that it's not a big deal.
Yeah, seriously, dude.
Don't don't be like,
bottle it in.
It was all right, like whatever, you know. It was like it was fine, I guess.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Why
be psyched.
Seriously, there's no harm. You can't worry.
You're not like trying to like boost a score by 0.5 to the judges by claiming it. This is just for you.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, I mean, yeah, no matter who's there, who's watching, nobody watching, like, it is for yourself, and you don't even think about it. It really, it's freaking just good for the soul, for sure. You can't, it's like bottling up your emotions, you know?
Right.
Like, why would you, like, diminish your freaking that good feeling?
Right.
So, yeah, I think I'm all for it, for sure. Yeah.
That was a great story.
People should claim it.
Yeah.
Claim it all, dude.
Claim it all.
The good
no
things
matter
in
what
life.
level of surfer you're at, if you catch a wave that's great for you, you should claim that shit.
Yeah, guaranteed.
Because it doesn't matter. It's all just it's you pushing yourself and surprising yourself to the next level.
Definitely.
That was a hell of a story, dude. That was a hell of a story. So I want to switch over to bow hunting.
Yeah.
Okay. So
love it.
And particularly solo bow hunting, which you've done a bit of, and we'll tell one story here. So what has tell me about the experience of solo bow hunting.
I know. Okay. So yeah, I mean, bow hunting is one of those things, kind of like scoring good waves, where if you wait around for people to show up, it's never really going to go like the way you want. Mm-hmm. So it can take some mental fortitude for sure, but you just got to take matters into your own hands and just go. And I feel like that's one of the things with hunting and in general is people are always looking for knowledge and people to go with. And if you just are waiting for other people's schedules to line up and stuff, you're not going to really get to practice and progress as quickly as you want. So yeah, I've always just been in life, like never really wanted to wait and just like, if I have the time, I'm going to go and I'm going to figure it out myself. And over the years, I've been going to Big Sur and probably mostly have done most of my solo hunting in Big Sur. Because in between work, you just drive an hour down the coast, you're in 300,000 acres of Los Padres National Forest, and
we don't give up any
really
specific spots, but there's a big area.
Honestly, go for it. It's like the hardest bullshit ever. And you'll get a lot of poison oak and take a couple trips down the steep mountains, and I realized, I mean, every year at the end of my hunting stint there, I'm like, I'm never gonna come back here again. It's impossible.
Right.
And but every year July comes back around and I'm like, I can't wait until August when I want to go into the Alpine for archery season to start. I'm like, I got to go hone the skills now. And again, like just not waiting for people. I'm like, I have the window and I'm going to go. And I've seen bucks and, I like pushing myself to, get out and just not have the comfortability of like my family and friends. And just, it definitely teaches you how to be a more independent man, just to, push yourself to be in your own thoughts and make all your own decisions. And especially if you're hunting with a buddy, like you're never going to make the decision you'd make otherwise if you're solo hunting, which I really like that aspect. Like it's all on you. And if you made the wrong decision, that's on you. If it all works out, then you made the right decision. And either way, like even though each situation's different, you know you're going to be progressing, and you're not gonna like resent like somebody else if they made you veer right when you wanted to go left or whatever. So yeah, I feel like as far as progression in bow hunting, you need to solo hunt as much as possible because yeah.
And are you camping out doing multiple days
yeah
down there?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm gonna do some more like car camp style next year, but usually I'll just go up into like 1,000 feet of elevation and camp around and yeah, I mean,
and then
there's a lot of access, so
stay a few days and then you're just out
as long
there
as I can.
Yeah, and then you're out there solo. And let's tell the story of this year.
Oh my God,
what happened?
This was the ultimate claim.
Okay.
No, besides the big wave at Jaws. But it's funny how much we claim like when you kill a deer. Like that's fine.
Sure.
So yeah, it had probably been like 4 years of hunting Big Sur, and I see bucks every time. And I've had a couple opportunities, but it's always too loud. Or I just blow it because, you know, I'm pretty new in the grand scheme. Probably been doing it for 6 years. So this year came around and I found a little sliver of land that was public and I had never checked out. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go check it out. And like, I know there, I've always seen bucks in the fog line, but they're always in the thickest shit ever. And like, I've always just been too scared to like make the move because it's like, oh, it's an impossible stalk. It's thick. The bushes are over my head and it's riddled with poison oak, and I'm never gonna get it like close. It's impossible to kill a buck in Big Sur.
Right.
With your bow.
So for people who don't bow hunt, if the vegetation is too thick, it can cause a few different problems. One is you don't have a shooting lane.
Yep.
So if let's just say there's a ton of thick trees, bushes, all that kind of thing. Even if you see an animal, you need a clear lane to be able to kill that animal.
At least, yeah.
So you're looking for areas that have
edge habitat, kind of.
Edge habitat. So there's a place for you to hide, but that animal will maybe come out into a clearing that you can then have a good shot at, which as a bow hunter is you need to get a lot closer to that animal than you would rifle hunting, which is why it becomes astronomically harder. And rifle hunting is hard too.
Oh yeah. Guaranteed.
Depending on where you're going. But that's so you're saying that the timber's too thick, and you're trying to find an area with a good clearing.
Yes, somewhat. Which I realized this year, like if I saw a buck, I was just gonna try and just get in the thicks. And luckily, which one of the biggest realizations, which actually I learned from Miola in Maui, is wind is your friend, of course. I mean, especially for scenting you, but for sound cover. And it was like a nuclear northwest wind day, probably like gusting 30 miles an hour and just ripping up this little like kind of drainage gorge that I found. And I had located a couple does and like they bedded down and were cruising, and then I kind of saw like a spike like way in the distance, and you can't kill spikes, so I was just letting him do his thing. And as soon as I was about to move on, I was just glassing and like a buck.
And can you kill does?
No.
You can't kill does either. Okay.
No. Of course not. In other states you can.
Yeah.
And
right. So
you should probably be able to in California, maybe.
Right, but
like
just
get a doe tag.
For people who don't know, there's different rules depending on different areas, even within a state, of what sex deer you can kill, what size. Or, so a spike
or age. Sorry, is more,
age. Yeah, so better. It's a male deer that is not fully grown to maturity. Yeah. So continue.
Yeah. Well, I'll kind of start, I guess, more from the beginning. So I had planned on just like doing a few night stint camping and moving my way along ridges and just trying to locate animals. And luckily, like one of the first drainages that I found was just riddled with deer. And yeah, there was does and spikes, and hadn't seen a legal buck yet. but I had a really good glassing vantage, and it was so thick. But up above, there was it was like cattle land, and the national forest had like leased to ranchers for them to graze their cattle. So they had like kind of moved down into the drainages a little. So it was like more of an approach into the thick stuff compared to a lot of the zones in Big Sur, that fog line vegetation, since like the fog is so consistent there, it's always like feeding the vegetation. So that stuff like piles up pretty far, probably about like 800 feet in elevation. But this, since like the cattle abatement, it was pushed down probably to about like 400 feet of elevation of like approachable stalking potential. So after I located that buck, which was like super random, just like doing the old grid lock with your glass, like, okay, there's a bunch of does in here, I'm probably going to find a buck if he shows himself. And like right when I'm like glassing to go like see if the does are still there, he just appears in my glass, and he's just like a nice fork, and all I can see is his head and his antlers. I'm like, oh hell yeah, probably not going to kill this deer, but I'll watch him. And
so what distance is he at?
He's probably 200 to 250 yards.
Right.
It's a really tight
way too
drainage.
far for a bow.
Yeah. Rifle would have smoked him then and there for sure. But it's early archery season. It's like mid-July. Coming off a high from being married. And like I feel like this is like a ring of power now. Like a lot of good things has happened
You're
since
like
I put on
Frodo.
this ring of power. It's awesome. And yeah, I'm like, first hunt since I got married, I'm just like psyched. And yeah, locate a nice buck. And like for Big Sur, there's a lot of fork genetics, and they live in such thick country that I don't know, for some reason they just like have this kind of like stunted like growth, but their bodies get pretty big for blacktail. So I was like, wow, that's a pretty freaking nice buck. Like, let's see what he does. So just watch him for like an hour and keep losing him in and out. It's like really high fennel weed, you know? And finally, I think he beds down, and he's not showing himself for probably another like 30 minutes. So I'm like, okay, here's my chance. I'm going to like, I really studied where he was. There was like a rock kind of outcropping, and then he was like below that, probably about 100 yards. Studied. Like, I like to take photos like through my glass of where he is. So I have reference points, because you know when you locate an animal and then you go in for the stock, it's a completely different topography and everything from when you're looking at it from above. So yeah, studied it, and yeah, made my approach. And right then and there, like, I knew it was windy because I was freaking freezing, but it didn't really click that it was going to be beneficial for my stock until I started making my way down. And yeah, I just kind of took this finger, used the rock outcropping, and got to where I thought he was, because there was like brambles and poison oak, and then that was like really green, and then the fennel weed that he was in was like a more kind of like yellow green color. So I was like on that line, like I know he's like in that vicinity somewhere. And it was like really steep country. There was like no good like footing to like wait, so I like had to like dig a hole in the bushes just so I could like have this little spot to kind of somewhat be comfortable. And I was like, okay, if he like gets out of his bed in the next like few hours, I'll like probably have an opportunity. So I like had left my pack and everything to be more
stealthy,
discreet and stealthy up above the ridge, like 100 yards or something. So I didn't have my water, no food, just me and my bow. And I'm just chilling in my little hole and like just peeking over the bushes like every like couple minutes, just making sure he doesn't get up and I blow it. And like 5 hours goes by, and I'm like, oh my God, this buck is not wanting to show himself, or he's just not there, and he just slunk away.
And you're still there,
and
hanging
I'm still there.
Yeah.
Like, you know, those intrusive thoughts get in your head, and I was just like, damn, he's probably not even there. And like I see another buck, another forky, like above me, and I'm like, should I go like chase a deer, or should I just wait it out? And like I had an arrow knocked, and I'm in my hole, and I'm just like, okay, he moved off. Like he just moved off, and I didn't even notice him because it's so thick, and I can't really hear very well because the wind's ripping uphill. And yeah, as soon as I put my arrow away, put it back in the quiver, and I'm gonna like bail out of there, he just does a little freaking rattle, and like there was so much noise cover, and it was like all the bushes were constantly rattling, but then like this rattle, and like he actually like ended up like breaking a twig or something under him, and it was like unnatural compared to like all the other noises, and I was like, that was him for sure. So it just gave me like enough longevity to wait it out, and I waited another 3 hours. So it was an 8-hour just waiting in a bush hole on steep, big surge terrain.
With no water.
With no water. Because I didn't want to move, because it was actually a bitch to get to this zone, and it was just
that's some patience, dude.
And then like as I'm waiting, actually, there was some random guy, because I could see Highway 1. Like I'm on the fog line, just like I know the bucks like to hang out there, and I'm like, it doesn't even matter. They don't give a, they just love that area. There's like constant new growth vegetation all year. And some guy pulls off, and I'm like, is this guy a hunter? He like gets his bino harness on, and he like hikes up, no weapon or anything, and he's glassing from like a lower vantage point. And I'm just watching this guy like as in entertainment, like what the hell is going on here? And he doesn't see me because I'm like super well hidden, but yeah, as so I kind of get antsy again, and it's like on hour 8, and it's probably like 45 minutes of shooting light still and legal light. So I'm like antsy again, and like that buck again, before the buck I saw, he shows himself, and he's like feeding, and I'm like, oh my God, should I like go around again? Like I had this thought, round 2, to like go stalk around and try to get above this buck. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go do that. And like I get up, and I'm like out of my hole with my bow, and I look down, and that buck is out of his bed, just like 20 feet over from where I thought he'd come out. And I'm like, holy shit, no way. And he like feeds this way. So I kind of like shadowed him a little bit, and then he disappears. And I'm like, I look over, and like 10 yards away, there's 2 does. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm just going to blow it. All this waiting, and I'm about to blow it. But just such good noise cover, and like the bushes were like here. So I was pretty much just like my head popping out. And I had a little like camo mask and stuff. And
you're hungry now too.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, okay, just stay still. And then that buck like reappears kind of back where he got out of his bed. I was like, oh my God, this guy's a freaking such a master of stealth. It's like being put in my place right now. I have no idea what's going on. Like I'm just in his zone. Like nobody's like ever been in there for sure. And yeah, I'm like, okay, so I get good eyes on him, and I'm just like in the thickest shit, just trying to like step over weird things, like terrible footing. Like there's no way you're gonna be quiet, but luckily just the wind was ripping so hard, all my noise was going away from him. And
it's either a time that you're gonna be able to get a buck, or you just spent 8 hours sitting.
So he just keeps feeding, and like I get back kind of like in another little hole, and I'm just waiting. And he's like, I can just see his antlers like flicking out of the bushes a little bit, and I like see an ear flicker, and I'm like, I like drew at one point, and then this whole time the guy that's glassing is found me and is like watching my whole stalk. And I'm like, what are the odds of this, dude?
Crazy.
And like he was like, I could see him, and I'm like giving him like a thumbs up and shit.
Shakas, bro.
Yeah, a couple shakas. And yeah, this buck just keeps feeding, no opportunity. And I like almost just ear hold him a couple times, because I was like under 20 yards. I was like, I could definitely do that, but
yeah, shoot him in the head.
Yeah, which ended up happening.
Whoa.
But yeah, I guess very long story short, he finally feeds out, and I like had my lanes lined up. It was super thick, but there was really big deer trails that were like 3 feet wide. That if he if
he steps into that area,
quarter, like whatever he's doing, like hopefully broadside, I'll have a perfect shot at like 15 yards. So he doesn't really move. He's just feeding from the same spot, and I like creep back to the left. I'm like looking down at him. I'm probably like 10 or 20 feet in elevation above him. And I like kind of go towards the lane, and I'm like, I just have a good feeling that he's going to step out into there. So I go back above the lane, kind of originally where I found him, and start creeping down like towards him. I'm like getting antsy at this point. Like, I'm going to make a lane happen because he's not getting out of his sticks.
And it's getting dark.
So I like creep down, and then he all of a sudden just starts making moves, and I'm like, oh shit. Like he's moving, and it just keeps moving from this like feeding in the same spot for an hour to just moving hard. And I'm like, okay, freaking draw my bow. Didn't even need to arrange him. And he like comes into the lane, instantly turns and comes towards me. And I'm like, okay, no broadside shot, but he closes the distance, and I'm like 10 or 12 yards, and he's just looking at me, but like doesn't even see me, just looking for the next feed spot. Just freaking put an arrow right between his eyes and just drop him then and there.
Whoa.
Yeah. It was just, I was baffled.
And the dude in the distance has his arms over his head, claiming it like Wilem at Jaws.
He didn't even know what happened, like, because all of a sudden he sees the buck, and then he sees me draw and take the shot, and then the buck just dropped.
Damn.
His brain shot is fatal. Boom.
Will Dog, those were two epic stories. And
nuts.
That was wild.
Are we getting timed?
We're getting timed?
Yeah.
This was so much fun, dude.
Yeah.
I'm such a fan.
Dang.
More to come.
More to come.
More to come,
sure.
dude. Anytime. Where can people get in touch with you? Instagram?
God, yeah. Instagram. Just
Wilem Banks?
Pretty much Instagram's the only thing. Yeah.
Big year for you, dude.
It was.
I'm super stoked for you.
Yeah. I want a little shout out to my little sister, Lauren, Lil Banksy on Instagram. She is a quad skate extraordinaire, and her and a bunch of just epic quad skate chicks.
What's quad skate?
Quad skate is roller skating, but they're freaking like gnarly street skating.
Okay.
They do like insane stuff, basically
Sick.
skateboarding on quads.
Okay.
They just came out with Shell Shock. It's like a new edit for women in roller skating.
That's amazing.
And she has a really awesome part, so I just recommend everyone go check out and give support to
YouTube.
On YouTube.
Okay.
Shell Shock.
Shell Shock.
Yeah.
If you want to see some.
By Lazo. Lazo's the company that put it on.
Okay. And your little sister's Instagram?
Lil Banksy.
Lil Banksy.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, go watch it. Check it out.
And finally, you have a real job despite doing pro athlete shit.
I gotta get to that.
So you make custom saunas.
Yeah.
Right. So you design these really well crafted custom saunas all around California. If
yeah, mostly Santa Cruz, but I could ship them for sure.
Okay. And what's the name of the business?
Banks&Banks.
Banks&Banks.
Me
brother.
and my brother.
So if
Brotherly
you need,
run, yeah.
if you want an amazing high quality sauna at your house, hit these
touches.
guys up. All right.
Joinery.
Such a blast, dude. Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle.
Bye.
Bye.